We had a shooting yesterday involving congressmen, and actually it might be fair to call it a terror attack. So I'll leave that up to you guys to make the determination as to just how political this was in nature, but the very definition of a terror attack is violence done against civilians or, innocent people for a political or religious motive. So this is from CNN here. Here's what they say. Representative Steve Scalise, a congressional staffer, a lobbyist, and a member of the Capitol Police Force were shot Wednesday in Alexandria, Virginia, during Republicans' early morning practice ahead of a charity baseball game. Federal law enforcement officials identified the alleged shooter as James Hodgkinson, 66 years old, of Belleville, Illinois, who died following a shootout with authorities. At least 6 people, including Scalise, the third-ranking member of House Republican leadership as the majority whip, were hospitalized. Scalise was in critical condition after suffering damage to internal organs, and his injuries will require additional operations, according to a MedStar Washington Hospital Center medical update late Wednesday. Congressman Steve Scalise sustained a single rifle shot to the left hip. The bullet traveled across his pelvis, fracturing bones, injuring internal organs, and causing severe bleeding, MedStar said in a statement put out by Scalise's office. He underwent immediate surgery and an additional procedure to stop bleeding. He has received multiple units of a blood transfusion. His condition is critical and he will require additional operations. We will provide periodic updates. Hodgkinson's Facebook page is largely political, and his profile picture is a caricature of Bernie Sanders as Uncle Sam. The Facebook feed is filled with anti-Trump sentiments such as Trump is guilty and should go to prison for treason. He also liked a political cartoon that suggested that Scalise should be fired. On March 22nd, he posted, "Trump is a traitor. Trump has destroyed our democracy. It's time to destroy Trump and co." Vermont Senator Bernie Sanders said both in a statement and on the Senate floor that he had learned the shooter had volunteered on his Democratic presidential campaign, and he condemned the shooting in the strongest possible terms. So what we have here is a very, very rare instance of somebody who's a Bernie Sanders fan who believes in violence and did violence against congressmen. So, yeah, I mean, left-wing terrorist is what we have here. The guy has had a clear political agenda, and he attacked Republican lawmakers. And, man, was this news. When I heard about this, I almost couldn't believe it, because Bernie Sanders is a guy who advocates for peace endlessly. David Sirota was tweeting about this yesterday. There were, a few days before this incident, Bernie Sanders was giving a speech on the importance of community. A guy who's advocated for nonviolence his entire career, whether it be nonviolent protest or whether it be being part of various anti-war movements. I mean, this is what Bernie Sanders does. This is who Bernie Sanders is. And you have a guy who was apparently a fan of Bernie who didn't get the message, didn't get the whole philosophy of Bernie and what he's about. And, Bernie, I'm not going to go through Bernie's entire statement here, but you guys can go check it out on your own if you want. But Bernie did this, long response, basically condemning this in the strongest possible terms, and we believe in nonviolence, and so on and so forth. And many of the takes on this have been insufferable, because New York Times had a piece about, this really highlights a problem of hidden anger on the progressive left and how stuff like this can happen. It is literally just one dude. So let's be clear about that. But having said that, yes, it is true that the definition of a terror attack is doing violence against innocent people for a political or religious reason, and that very well may be exactly what was going on here. But we also should note there's a mix of factors that, have gone into a guy like this doing what he did. I'm willing to bet a significant amount of money that mental illness does play a role for sure. He used an assault weapon in this attack, which he purchased legally. So, again, David Sirota was tweeting about this yesterday, and he was making some fantastic points. He said, let's create a Hunger Games economy, arm everybody, and have a totally untreated mental health crisis in the United States, and see what happens. Well, this is kind of what happens. And there were some really, really cringy tweets that people were digging up. Like Rand Paul, for example, was one of the people who was at the practice, and people dug up tweets of him saying, or I should be clear, quoting Judge Napolitano when Napolitano was on Fox News, when Napolitano made the argument, why do you think we have the Second Amendment? We don't have it for deer hunting. We have it so that people can, shoot at the government when the government gets too tyrannical. That's what this guy's doing in his mind. I didn't say that he's right, because he's not. I don't believe in violence. You shouldn't do violence against congressmen or senators, against anybody. The only time I believe in violence is for self-defense. But that's a point that's often made on the right. Hey, we need the Second Amendment to use our weapons against the government if they get too tyrannical. Government's pretty tyrannical. Do I need to go through the list of stuff? Waging offensive wars against countries that didn't attack us, NSA spying on absolutely everybody, no more Fourth Amendment protection from unreasonable search and seizure. We have a government that holds people extrajudicially, no more due process, no more habeas corpus. So, pretty tyrannical, and this guy was shot against the government. But again, I'm not in favor of that. But maybe, that rhetoric should be toned down a little bit in terms of, for shooting at the government. You're not going to have, some random people with a Ruger 22 overtake a nuclear-armed state with the most powerful military the world has ever seen. So let's just, back away from that whole argument. But by the way, the security detail for Scalise, the only reason there was security there is because Scalise is the third-ranking Republican. So he's in leadership, and people in leadership get security detail. Rand Paul said if it wasn't for Scalise being at the practice, it would have been a bloodbath. Everybody would have been massacred. And everybody would have been massacred because there would have been no security there for the other senators and congressmen. Only because Scalise was there, there were two security people who got in a firefight with him and ended up killing him. Joe Barton said, thankfully, this guy wasn't even a good shot. At least to this point, nobody's passed away. There was also another shooting yesterday, by the way. I think it was it at a UPS facility or something? But 3 people dead. So, and I don't know, is that categorized as a mass shooting? I don't know what the exact number is. Does it have to be 3 people or more, or 4 people or more? I don't know the exact numbers and qualifications, but more people died there. At least to this point, nobody's died yet here. Steve Scalise is in critical condition. Obviously everybody hopes he gets better. But yeah, this isn't the way to solve problems, man. This isn't the way to solve problems. Bernie believes in nonviolence, advocates for nonviolence. He pushes for stuff like Medicare for all, and a living wage, and free college, and ending the wars. So to do violence on behalf of a political ideology which advocates nonviolence makes no sense. That's a contradiction, and you're an idiot if you do that. And this guy clearly was a little off his rocker, probably had mental health issues, and was armed to the teeth, and there was a problem. By the way, if we had for a guy like this, I wouldn't be surprised. Now, we don't know all the facts yet, but for a guy like this, I would be surprised if when we learn more facts, that he's not like paranoid schizophrenic or has severe bipolar disorder or something. And if we had a universal background check, maybe we would have been able to prevent this guy from getting a weapon. So, heartbreaking situation. And believe it or not, here's the craziest part of this story. Believe it or not, there are more people on the right saying, look, it's just one guy. Bernie is a nice guy. He doesn't advocate violence. His followers aren't going around killing Republicans. This isn't like an epidemic or something. There's more people on the right saying that than there are corporate Democrats saying that. There's a decent number of corporate Democrats who are like, see, there we go. Told you, Bernie Sanders. It's violent ideology, and there's far left. I mean, they're the problem, and this is what happens when you go in the direction of somebody who believes in social democracy. The fuck are you talking about? So, this is a story that rattled me. It rattled the entire United States, and here's the final fact I'll bring up real quick. There were, I believe the number was 17 congressmen and senators who've been shot at since the beginning of the U.S. So this is kind of like a recurring thing that we've seen, and nobody should go that road, and we should all try to wage the political revolution in a peaceful way, a nonviolent way. We wage the revolution when we vote. And we get a wave of Justice Democrats in there, true liberals and progressives, to fight for the right things. That this guy decided to take a weapon and go after Republicans. Doesn't matter how odious somebody's ideology is, you don't resort to political violence. The only time you could ever use violence, and it's okay, is in self-defense, and that clearly wasn't the case here. There's no doubt about that. So, the shooter passed away. I don't know if I mentioned that, but he died from, I think it was in the article, but he died from his injuries. I wish Steve Scalise and everybody who was affected by this a speedy recovery. And those, the security detail that was there, I mean, they really are some heroes, and they ended up saved a lot of people just by virtue of the fact that they were there and they were able to do their job relatively effectively.